In this screencast, I will try to simulate fabric stitching in Inkscape version 0.46. Let's begin. Okay, I got the idea for this tutorial from a website called pshero.com. It's a Photoshop website, and I found this and I thought it was kind of a neat little project here. Again, this was done in Photoshop, but it can easily be adapted to Inkscape. What I want to try to do is simulate this stitching effect around the text. So let's get to it. Okay, first things first, let's go to File. We're going to go to our document properties, and I'm going to set my document up for 500 wide, 250 high. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull in my first material. This is kind of a denim or a canvas material that I got from a texture site. I'll give you a link to the particular texture site where I found this if you want to use it. Otherwise, just throw in your own texture. Okay, I'm going to put that on our page. And I'm going to draw a new rectangle, and I'm going to make this 500 wide, 250 high, and we'll snap that on our page. Whoops. Okay, let me zoom in here, and it looks like I already have my stroke set. I'm going to set my stroke to a 2. And I want to make sure, third one down, I'm using the dashed stroke. Okay, now what we're going to do is I'm going to go to my node tool. We'll go to Path, Dynamic Offset, and I'm going to pull that in. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. And I'm going to remove the stroke, or I'm sorry, the fill on the inside. Okay. Now, hopefully, that kind of looks like stitching around here. So that's the effect that I'm trying to go for. So let's zoom out. And let's bring in our next fabric. This is just a black fabric, and we're going to put it to the side for now. Now what I'm going to do is draw a brand new rectangle. We'll make this one red, and I'll remove the stroke. And I'm going to make this 400 wide by 140 high. Matter of fact, let's make this yellow. Okay, now what we need to do is I need to simulate like a zigzag effect across here. Basically what I'm trying to do is if your wife has a sewing kit at home, or maybe you do if you're Richard, I don't know. I know Richard loves to sew and knit. He's totally into that. But if you have pinking shears in your sewing kit, then you know that when you cut fabric with it, it kind of gives it that zigzag shape. And that's what I'm trying to go for. I wasn't sure how to do that in Inkscape. I know that there are several ways, but you know, I always try to find the fastest way. So I had to have Richard help me on this one. And Richard thought if I set up a grid and just kind of drew around it, you know, snapping to my grid, it might be the fastest way to do it. And I'd have to agree, because I think that is a pretty slick way. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our File pull down, Document Properties. We're going to go to our Grids. We're going to use a rectangular grid, and we're going to select New. I'm going to leave it as a 1 right now, and I'm going to zoom in on my object here. I'm going to make sure that I move it around so that it snaps to my squares. Okay, now You can see one is a little too fine. So I'm going to go back to my document properties, and I'm going to set this. Let's try a 5. 5 might be too fine too, and I think it is. We'll try a 10. Okay, I think that's pretty good. Now, what I've done, again, I've moved this around so that it snaps perfectly into my grid squares, so you can see that I have perfect squares across here. I'm not splitting a square or anything like that. And because I've done that, I can go ahead and make my zigzag effect correctly. So what I'm going to do is we're going to zoom on this thing here, and I'm going to grab my Bezier tool, and I'm going to select my first point, and I'm going to go all the way around this thing, just like you see here. Again, there might be better ways, there might be faster ways, but it wasn't obviously clear to me, you know, which way to go. I don't think it really matters, just as long as you kind of capture your design intent. I think that's all that matters in the end. If you make a mistake, all you need to do is hit your backspace button. And it will it'll remove your last stroke that you made, or I'm sorry, the last path that you drew. Okay, this is the boring part of the tutorial. And rounding the horn here. And we'll connect it. And then we'll hit enter. Okay, let's zoom out and see what we just drew. I'm going to go ahead and go to view and turn my grids off. I don't need them anymore. Okay, and that is the effect that I was trying to do. Okay, now that it's a closed path, I can go ahead and shade it and give it a different color. Okay, works just like that. But before I do that, or before we carry on, I'm going to draw a new rectangle, put it behind here, and I'll put it behind everything. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I need to cut this away from my shape. So the first thing that I'm going to do is select my green color. Let's actually make that green. Okay, so my green color, I'll select my big red rectangle. We'll go to path and we'll do a difference. Okay, now it appears like nothing had happened. Well, I did make a cut through it. Okay, you can see it here. So let me undo that. This time I'll push it to the front so you can see. Okay, now in order to get the shape into this yellow piece here, what I'm going to do is select my yellow object, select my red, and we'll do a difference on that. Okay, now I got it. Okay, now you're asking yourself, Heathen X, why did you just go the long way there? You just drew this shape, and you could have just taken the shape that you drew and used the fill. Well, that's what I would have done, but I wanted to show you that when you draw certain shapes, it is very easy to just to cut them away from other things. So whether you like that tip or not, maybe you'll use it for other things that you want to do. So I had a reason for doing it that way. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, well, let me zoom in here. I'm going to take this texture that I brought in, and I'm going to go to Object, and we are going to do Objects to Pattern. Okay, Now I'm going to go ahead and delete that because I don't need it anymore. I'm going to make this shape that I've just drawn, and I'm going to change its fill to a pattern fill, and I'm going to use this new pattern. Now, it's important to note with Inkscape, you do get artifacting sometimes. You can see it. I have a white line here and a white line here. That doesn't actually exist. It's just because Inkscape gets a little overloaded at times. The rendering doesn't work quite so well. It will go away, so don't worry about it. All right. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to duplicate it. And we're going to change that duplicated copy black. And what we're going to do is make a drop shadow. I'll give this about a 2% blur. And we'll try maybe a 70% for the opacity. And I'm going to push that down like so. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is send this all the way to the back, or actually just lower it a step. So I've got a little bit of a drop shadow on there. Now the next thing I want to do is my texture that I have, I didn't quite get the texture that I wanted. I wanted something a little darker. Well, you can take your texture, open it up in GIMP, do whatever you want to in there, but you can also kind of work around it in Inkscape. And what you can do is you can right click on this and duplicate it, make this black, and then just change its you can just change its transparency. We'll try 50 here. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. And you can see that it gives me a darker texture. That's kind of what I want. So I'm going to go ahead, select this whole thing, and group it together. Okay. And we'll move this aside for now. That's my telephone ringing. Okay, now the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to write out some text. So I'll go ahead and do that. Okay, and we're going to pick a nice font. And I wanted something kind of rounded. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce this font. I think it's called Jungle. I'll show you what it looks like here. You can kind of see that everything is rounded, and I was thinking maybe that might work better for stitching. I'll get this kind of a little bit bigger here. I think that's what I want. Okay. All right. Let's move this up here, and I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is zoom in on this corner. I'm going to select my green texture. I'm going to go to Object, Pattern, Objects to Pattern, and I'm going to make this green texture a pattern. I'm going to select my first text. I'm going to pick a pattern, and that's not the pattern that I want, so I just hit the drop down and pick the pattern. That's green. Okay, and again, you have some artifacting through here. That does happen, but I'm not too concerned with it right now. Okay, now what I'm going to do is take this text here, and I'm going to give it a stroke. We'll remove the fill, and I think 1's fine. Now I'm going to zoom in on this, and what I'm going to do is draw a guide. So I'm just going to drag that down from our ruler. I'll put it about right here, and we're going to draw a V. We do that with our Bezier tool, and I'm holding the control key down, and when I do that, you can see down here in your status bar where you are for degrees. Okay, so if you're looking for a 45-degree angle or whatever, you can go ahead and just kind of move that around as long as you have your control key down and get that. Okay, so I'm going to go 70 degrees and then back up 70. I'll hit enter here. And I'm going to push this over here, and I'm going to get rid of our guide. We do that by holding the control key down and then just left clicking on that. Or you can come up here and just turn the guide off, turn off its visibility without deleting it. Okay, so we're going to select our V-shaped object, go to our fill and stroke, and we'll give it rounded caps. Make this just a little bit smaller. Okay, and I'm going to change its stroke size to a 0.75. Now we'll put that on top of here and see what that looks like. I think that looks pretty good. Alright, so let's get on to our next part. Now what I'm going to do is right click on this and we are going to do a copy. That'll send this shape into our clipboard. I'm going to take this text, go to Object, go to Path, Object to Path. We're going to convert that to a path. So when we double click it, we'll see our nodes exposed. And I'm going to zoom out. And we'll zoom out one more time. Okay. Now, in order to get this V-shaped around this text here, I thought what might be the best is to use a live path effect. So we do that by going to going to Path. Wait a minute. Where are you? Here we go. Path. It's Path. We want to go to Path, Path Effects. And what we're going to do is select our path. And we're going to do Pattern Along Path. And we're going to do an Apply. Okay. Now what it's asking me to do is what kind of path do you want, or what kind of pattern do you want? We want to do a repeated pattern. And I need to paste in the shape that I drew so it knows what to pattern. So I'm going to paste that in. And you see now that I have my stitching effect. Okay. Now there's one thing I want you guys to note here is that the stitching is a little close together, and what you'll need to do is adjust the kerning on your text first before you carry on here. Now if you forget, it's okay. You can double click on this and all you need to do is select the red path and then you can arrow key over. But that's not as elegant as just adjusting the kerning of the text before you make it a path. Okay, so you may want to do whatever you want to your text there, but I'm going to leave that alone for now, and I'm going to delete this V. Okay, now if I want to change the stitching shape, what I can do is double click on this. Well, actually, let me do this. Let's go to Path, Path Effects. Let's select our path. And this time I'll use this Edit on Canvas tool, and what you'll see here is my V shape that I drew. Okay, so I'm not going to do it because it's a little CPU intensive, but if I move these nodes, it will automatically adjust the nodes. Adjust the path around this text here. That's what's great about live path effects. They work really well. Okay, so let's back up a little bit. And what I'm going to do is take both of these and we'll align them on top of each other. And I'm going to change my stitching from black to white. And I'm actually going to move the stitching back up here because I want to make sure that the stitching is on the black pattern. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and take that and group it, and I'm going to select this shape here, go to our line and distribute, and I'm going to change this to last selected, and then I'll center it up. Okay, now hopefully what I've simulated here is I wanted to show, like, if you had like a fabric or a patch or something, you can stitch around it here. Okay, so let's zoom out on that. And let's take this here and we'll group this together. Now what I'm going to do is put that on my page. Okay, I think we're getting close. Zoom in on this. I'm going to take this now and we'll just rotate it just slightly. Okay, and that is our screencast. Okay, so basically what we have is I have a background patch that I've stitched. I've got a piece of fabric that I've laid on top, and I've stitched in the letters or the word stitches. Now, I'm not sure what you would use this particular project for. Maybe if you've got some scrapbooking projects or whatever, maybe artwork like this might come in handy. Or maybe you're working on a website. I'm not sure. But you guys will come up with all kinds of ideas for this stuff, so it doesn't matter. So, anyways, that's our screencast, and thank you for watching. I'm Heathen X.